The heat arrives before the land does. It presses against the skin, not like warmth, but like resistance, as if the air itself has weight. Breath feels deliberate here. Every inhale costs something. The horizon shimmers, bends, dissolves, refusing to stay still long enough to be trusted. Distance lies openly. The ground appears closer than it is. The mountains look solid, yet float, suspended in a wavering veil of light. This is Death Valley, and it is already working on you. The valley floor sinks far below the level of the oceans, a vast geological wound pulled downward by forces older than memory. Here, the earth opens itself, exposing layers of time stacked like pages of a book no one was meant to read all at once. Heat pools in this basin, trapped, compressed, magnified. Sunlight does not simply land, it accumulates. The sky is mercilessly blue, not the soft blue of temperate places, but a sharp, polished blue, scrubbed clean of moisture. Clouds are rare intruders. Rain is a rumor. When water does fall, it arrives violently, briefly, and then vanishes, stolen back into the air or swallowed by salt and stone. Silence stretches across the valley, broken only by wind scraping across rock, by the faint ticking sound of salt crystals expanding and contracting under thermal stress. The land moves even when nothing appears to. This place holds the record for the highest air temperature ever measured on Earth. The number itself feels abstract until the body begins to understand it. Metal burns, rubber softens, electronics falter, thought slows. The human nervous system, evolved for balance, struggles to interpret conditions this extreme. The sun climbs higher and the valley responds. Salt flats glow white, blinding in their intensity. These are not beaches, not remnants of gentle seas, but the dried bones of ancient lakes that once filled this basin thousands of years ago. Water came here, lingered briefly in geological time, then fled. What remains is a crust of minerals stretching to the horizon, cracked into geometric patterns that look designed, deliberate, unreal. Each step across the salt produces a hollow crunch. Beneath the surface, moisture still hides, trapped under layers of crystallized history. The ground remembers water, even when the sky has forgotten it. Mountains rise abruptly from the valley floor, dark and jagged, their slopes carved by flash floods that may only arrive once in a decade. These floods leave scars, dry channels etched deep into stone, evidence of sudden violence in a place otherwise defined by stillness. Geology dominates here, not subtly, not politely. Fault lines pull the land apart, stretching the crust until it fractures. Death Valley exists because the earth is being torn open, slowly, relentlessly. Blocks of land drop downward as surrounding ranges lift upward. The valley deepens as the mountains rise, a paradox written in stone. Some rocks here are among the oldest exposed on the continent. They formed in oceans that vanished hundreds of millions of years ago, long before deserts existed, long before mammals, long before anything walked upright. Their presence collapses time. You stand in the present while touching the memory of worlds that no longer exist. Heat distorts everything. Light bends, shadows sharpen, colors bleach under relentless radiation. The land takes on an alien quality, not because it resembles another planet, but because it strips away expectations of how Earth is supposed to behave. And yet, life persists, small, almost invisible. Life clings to the margins of survivability. Creosote bushes spread roots outward instead of downward, harvesting rare rainfall across wide distances. Some individual plants may be thousands of years old, growing so slowly that time barely touches them. Their leaves release oils into the air, a scent sharp and medicinal, filling the heat with a strange, living presence. At night, when temperatures finally retreat, the desert exhales. Cold rushes in quickly, dramatically. The sky ignites with stars, unfiltered by humidity or light. The Milky Way stretches overhead in violent clarity. Silence deepens. The land that tried to kill you hours earlier now feels vast, calm, almost welcoming. But this mercy is temporary. Dawn returns without warning, and with it, the heat begins its climb again. The cycle is relentless, indifferent to comfort or fear. Death Valley does not change for visitors. Visitors change for Death Valley. Animals move cautiously, efficiently. Kangaroo rats never drink water, surviving entirely on moisture extracted from seeds. Their bodies recycle every drop. Coyotes travel vast distances under cover of darkness, avoiding the sun's punishment. Reptiles press their bodies against shaded stone, borrowing coolness from the earth itself. Even insects are engineered for survival here. Some emerge only after rare rains, living entire lifespans in days, laying eggs that will wait years, sometimes decades, for the next brief moment of moisture. Life here is not abundant. It is precise. Wind sweeps across the valley, carrying dust fine enough to invade lungs, eyes, machines. Sand dunes migrate slowly, grain by grain, reshaping themselves with patient inevitability. From a distance they look soft, inviting. Up close they burn. Time behaves strangely in Death Valley. Hours stretch, distances deceive. The mind, deprived of familiar cues, begins to drift. Heat induces mirages not just in vision, but in perception. Thought loops. Focus narrows. Survival becomes immediate. This is a landscape that punishes arrogance. It has watched civilizations rise and vanish elsewhere while remaining largely unchanged. It has endured climate shifts, tectonic violence, the slow drift of continents. It does not need to prove its power. It simply exists. And as the sun reaches its peak once more, pressing the valley into submission, you begin to understand that Death Valley is not named for what it kills, but for what it strips away. Illusions, expectations, control. Only the land remains. The heat thickens as the sun climbs, turning air into pressure. It presses against skin, against thought, against time itself. Movement becomes negotiation. Every step feels heavier than the last, as if the valley is quietly asking how badly you want to keep going. The ground here tells stories without words. Bands of color run across hillsides, reds, yellows, greens, purples, oxidized minerals exposed by erosion and time. These are not decorative landscapes, they are chemical records, iron rusting in open air, sulfur bleaching stone pale, volcanic ash hardened into layers that once fell from skies darkened by fire. Death Valley has burned before, drowned before, frozen before. Heat is only its current language. In places, the land folds into itself. Badlands crumble into sharp ridges and knife-edged gullies, too fragile to support weight, too steep to climb without collapse. These formations are temporary on a geological scale, born from rare but violent rains that carve soft sediment like claws. When storms come, water does not soak in. It runs, it rips, it rearranges the valley in minutes, undoing years of stillness. Then the sun returns, and the violence vanishes, leaving silence and scars. The valley floor stretches endlessly, a horizontal world where depth is measured not by elevation, but by heat. Air temperatures soar beyond what the human body is designed to endure. Internal systems begin to fail long before awareness catches up. Sweat evaporates instantly. Dehydration accelerates invisibly. Judgment fades. This is how the valley kills. Not dramatically, but quietly, patiently. And still, there are places where water hides. Tiny springs emerge from fault lines, feeding narrow ribbons of green in an otherwise colorless expanse. Around them, life clusters tightly. Insects swarm. Birds arrive briefly. Plants grow denser, darker. These oases are fragile miracles, dependent on underground pathways carved by tectonic movement. Shift the land slightly, and they vanish. Some pools hold creatures found nowhere else on Earth. Small fish, isolated for thousands of years, evolving in complete separation. Their existence defies probability. They survive because the valley, despite its cruelty, occasionally allows mercy. Above the basin, mountains stand like walls, trapping heat inside. Their slopes are bare, stripped of soil by wind and gravity. Rock slides leave fresh scars, bright, raw stone exposed against darker, weathered faces. Even mountains here are temporary. They are rising and eroding at the same time, locked in a slow-motion struggle between uplift and decay. From the peaks, the valley reveals itself fully, a vast, sunken world, shimmering, hostile, breathtaking. The scale is overwhelming. Roads, when visible at all, look like scratches. Vehicles appear fragile, out of place, temporary. The land dominates the frame. As afternoon drags on, shadows shorten until they nearly disappear. There is no refuge. The sun sits directly overhead, unfiltered, absolute. This is when Death Valley is most itself, not dramatic, not violent, just relentless. Yet even now, movement continues. A raven cuts across the sky, black against blue, riding thermals rising off the desert floor. Its wings barely move. It knows this heat. It owns it. Below, a lizard darts from shade to shade, timing its movements precisely, lifting its feet alternately to avoid burns. Survival here is choreography. Stone itself responds to temperature. Cracks echo faintly as rocks expand. At night, they will contract, splintering microscopically. Over centuries, mountains crumble grain by grain, reduced not by storms or glaciers, but by the daily rise and fall of heat. The valley is a machine powered by sunlight. As evening approaches, the light shifts. Harsh whites soften into gold. Shadows lengthen, finally offering relief. Colors deepen. The land appears gentler, almost forgiving. This is the illusion Death Valley offers at the end of the day, a reminder that beauty and danger are not opposites here. They coexist. The sun sinks behind jagged ridgelines, and heat begins to bleed away. Wind carries the scent of minerals and dust. The sky burns red, then purple, then fades into darkness with startling speed. Night arrives decisively. Stars erupt overhead, brighter than memory allows. The desert becomes a silhouette, its contours suggested rather than seen. Temperature drops rapidly, catching the unprepared by surprise. The same land that threatened to cook you hours earlier now chills exposed skin. In the darkness, the valley wakes differently. Nocturnal life emerges. Small mammals scurry. Insects chirp in rhythmic waves. Predators move with confidence. The desert hums softly, a low-frequency awareness that never fully quiets. Lying beneath this sky, the scale of time presses in. The valley has seen oceans come and go. It has watched continents tear apart. It has endured eras when this land was lush, when it was frozen, when it burned beneath volcanic skies. Humanity occupies only the thinnest layer of its memory. Morning will come again. The heat will rise again. The cycle will repeat. And Death Valley will remain what it has always been. Not empty, not dead, but exquisitely alive on its own terms, waiting patiently for the next creature to test itself against the sun. Dawn returns softly, almost apologetically. Light slips into the valley at a low angle, painting long shadows across salt and stone. For a brief moment, the desert feels suspended between extremes, neither burning nor cold, neither hostile nor gentle. This window is short. The valley never lingers. As the sun rises, the land reveals its contradictions. What looked smooth from a distance becomes fractured up close. Salt crust breaks into polygons, each edge sharp, deliberate, as if cut by design. These patterns form as moisture rises from below, evaporates instantly, and leaves minerals behind. Over time, repetition becomes geometry. The desert draws with mathematics. Wind begins to move again, slow at first, then steady. It carries sand like memory, redistributing the valley grain by grain. Dunes migrate imperceptibly, reshaping themselves with patience no living thing can match. Footprints left behind yesterday already soften, blur, disappear. Death Valley does not preserve presence. It erases it. Farther out, the land ripples into fields of gravel and stone, alluvial fans spilling from mountain mouths. These fans are built by violence. When rare storms hit, water rushes down steep canyons, dragging rock and debris with it. Boulders tumble, collide, shatter. In hours, tons of material spread across the valley floor. Then the water vanishes, leaving chaos arranged into slope and pattern. This is how the valley grows. The mountains themselves are a study in imbalance. They rise sharply, exposing layers once buried deep within the earth. Faults run like scars along their faces, reminders that this region is still being pulled apart. Tension builds silently beneath the surface, released occasionally through earthquakes that shift the land by inches, feet, sometimes more. The valley is not finished forming. Heat returns quickly. By mid-morning, the air thickens again, shimmering above the ground. Mirages bloom along the horizon. False water, false relief. The brain reaches for what it wants to see. The valley offers illusions freely, but never answers them. Colors drain under the sun. Browns fade to pale gold. Reds bleach toward pink. Shadows retreat into cracks and crevices. Even sound seems to thin, absorbed by open space. The desert becomes vast and quiet, its scale swallowing detail. Yet beneath the surface, chemistry never rests. Minerals leach upward through groundwater, crystallizing into delicate formations. Borax deposits form in veins and crusts, remnants of evaporated lakes and volcanic processes. These minerals tell stories of pressure, of heat, of slow rearrangement at the atomic level. The valley is an open laboratory, conducting experiments millions of years in the making. Life adapts with equal precision. Plants reduce themselves to essentials. Leaves shrink or vanish entirely. Waxy coatings reflect sunlight. Some species open their pores only at night, trading carbon dioxide in darkness to avoid moisture loss. Growth here is an act of restraint. Survival is subtraction. Animals mirror this efficiency. Movement is minimal. Activity is timed. Every calorie counts. Every mistake costs more than elsewhere. Evolution has stripped excess away, leaving creatures honed to endure, not thrive. At the edges of dry washes, tracks appear briefly, evidence of passage during cooler hours. Paw prints, hoof marks, the delicate trails of insects. By afternoon, wind smooths them away. The desert records nothing for long. Time stretches differently under this sun. Minutes feel elongated. Distance deceives. Landmarks refuse to approach. The valley resists progress, not by blocking the path, but by dissolving it. By afternoon, heat reaches its apex again. The valley floor radiates energy upward, amplifying the sun's assault. Standing still feels dangerous. Thought narrows to essentials: shade, water, movement. This is not fear, it is clarity. The human body is not built for this. Cooling systems fail, muscles weaken, the mind misjudges. Death Valley does not attack, it waits. It allows mistakes to unfold naturally. And yet, beauty persists stubbornly. Light refracts through heat haze, creating halos around distant ridges. Colors pulse subtly, stone glows. The land feels otherworldly, not because it is unfamiliar, but because it operates without compromise. This is Earth without moderation. As the sun begins its descent once more, relief returns gradually. Shadows lengthen, air loosens its grip. The desert exhales, releasing heat stored all day in rock and sand. Evening winds carry whispers of coolness, of mercy. The sky transforms again, this time into layers of amber and violet. Mountains become silhouettes. The valley floor darkens, absorbing color. Heat retreats into memory. Night arrives swiftly. Stars flood the sky, sharper than anywhere else. Constellations feel close enough to touch. The Milky Way stretches overhead like a scar of light. In this darkness, the valley feels infinite, ancient, indifferent to observation. The cold settles in. Temperatures drop fast, catching heat-drunk bodies off guard. The same ground that burned hours earlier now chills through clothing and skin. Extremes rule here, with no transition, no warning. In the darkness, life resumes its hidden rhythm. Tiny sounds emerge, scratching, chirping, movement just beyond sight. The desert belongs to these hours. Lying beneath this sky, it becomes clear that Death Valley is not a place of death alone. It is a place of limits, a landscape that reveals exactly how much or how little can endure. And as the stars wheel overhead, tracing paths older than the valley itself, the land remains, patient and unchanging, waiting for the sun to rise again. The valley remembers everything, even when it appears to forget. Long before heat earned its reputation here, water ruled this land. Vast lakes once filled the basin, reflecting skies that no longer exist. Shorelines carved into surrounding hills still linger, faint rings etched into stone like ghostly fingerprints. They mark where waves once broke, where fish swam, where sediments settled gently instead of burning under sun. Those waters are gone now, pulled away by climate shifts and tectonic tilt, evaporated into eras that ended quietly. What remains is absence, and the minerals that absence leaves behind. Salt, borates, sulfates. The valley floor is a ledger of evaporation, each crystal a record of something that vanished. Heat accelerates everything: chemical reactions, weathering, decay. Even time feels compressed, sped up, as if the valley runs on a different clock. Days here feel longer, heavier, yet years pass unnoticed. Rocks fracture, hills slump. The land rearranges itself in increments too small to see but too persistent to stop. In some places, the ground itself moves. Rocks slide across flat plains, leaving long, deliberate tracks etched into hardened mud. No human hand guides them, no animal pulls them. For decades, they move in silence, driven by rare rains, thin sheets of ice, and wind strong enough to push stone. The valley performs these quiet miracles without explanation, reminding observers that not all motion needs witnesses. The air grows thinner with distance. Sound travels oddly here, sometimes far, sometimes not at all. A voice can feel swallowed, absorbed by space. Silence dominates, not as emptiness, but as presence. It presses inward, amplifying internal noise, thoughts echoing louder than footsteps. This is where perception bends. Heat blurs the boundary between body and environment. The sun becomes more than light. It becomes force. Skin tightens, eyes strain. The world contracts to essentials. The valley strips away distraction until only sensation remains: light, heat, breath. And still, beneath this punishment, systems persist. Microbes thrive in salt flats, feeding on chemistry instead of sunlight. They tint pools pink and orange when rare water appears, coloring the desert briefly before vanishing again. These organisms resemble life found in Earth's earliest chapters, when conditions were harsh and oxygen scarce. In Death Valley, the ancient is not buried. It is exposed. The valley hosts extremophiles, life forms that challenge definitions. They survive boiling summers, freezing winters, toxic soils. They endure cycles that would erase more complex creatures. In them, the planet remembers how to live without comfort. Even death here is temporary. A fallen animal disappears quickly, consumed by heat, insects, scavengers. Nothing lingers long. Bones bleach white, then crumble into dust. Nutrients re-enter the system. Scarcity demands efficiency. Windstorms roll through unexpectedly, walls of dust advancing across the valley floor. Visibility collapses. The world narrows to motion and sound. Sand scours rock faces, polishes stone, erases edges. Over centuries, these storms sculpt the land as surely as water once did. When storms pass, clarity returns abruptly. The sky cleans itself. The sun resumes dominance. The desert resets. The human presence here is brief, fragile, easily erased. Even the strongest structures succumb eventually. Metal warps, paint peels, stone cracks. The valley tolerates intrusion, but does not accommodate it. Standing alone in this expanse, scale becomes intimate. Mountains loom closer. Horizons feel unreachable. The valley's vastness is not empty. It is consuming. It fills awareness completely. As days stack upon one another, rhythm emerges. Dawn softness, midday brutality, evening forgiveness, night cold. Repeat. The cycle teaches patience. Resistance fades. Acceptance replaces it. This is the valley's quiet lesson. Not conquest, not domination. Endurance. Heat returns again and again, but so does night. Life adjusts, not by fighting conditions, but by aligning with them. The desert does not reward strength, it rewards precision. And as another sun sinks behind the jagged rim, casting long shadows across salt and stone, the valley settles once more into stillness, unchanged, unbothered, infinite. The deeper you remain, the more the valley reshapes the way you think. Heat becomes less an enemy and more a presence, constant, surrounding, impossible to ignore. It seeps into the mind, softening edges, slowing urgency. Time stretches, hours feel elastic. The desert does not hurry, and slowly, neither do you. The land here exists in gradients of survival. Places that appear barren reveal faint signs of persistence when watched closely enough. A slight discoloration in soil hints at microbial life beneath. A faint line of green marks a hidden moisture path. Even absence carries information. Wind carves the valley with invisible hands. Over decades, it sands cliffs into curves, smooths sharp edges, lifts dust into the sky and carries it beyond the basin. Some of that dust will travel thousands of miles, feeding distant ecosystems that will never know its origin. Death Valley gives without being asked. The mountains bordering the basin are relentless in their presence. They rise steeply, walls of stone that trap heat and compress space. Their slopes are graveyards of rockfall, evidence of constant erosion of gravity's patient work. At night, stones crack loudly as they cool, popping like distant gunfire. The land speaks even when unseen. Below, the valley floor pulses with mirage. Water appears where none exists. The illusion is perfect. Ripples, reflections, promise. It draws the eye, tempts the mind. The valley offers hope as a test. Human perception falters here not because the land is deceptive, but because expectation fails. This is not a place of moderation. It does not negotiate. It does not adapt to visitors. It simply remains. There are moments, rare and fleeting, when clouds gather. Their shadows sweep across the valley like living things, cooling patches of earth briefly before moving on. The scent of rain rises, metallic and sharp, igniting memory. When rain finally falls, the transformation is immediate. Water hits hard ground and explodes outward. Dry channels awaken instantly, racing with brown torrents that carry stone and debris in roaring waves. The violence is sudden, overwhelming, brief. Then it stops. The sun returns. Steam rises. The valley absorbs the event without ceremony. Days later, flowers bloom. Seeds that have waited years crack open overnight. The desert erupts in color. Yellows, purples, whites, blanketing slopes and flats in fragile abundance. Insects swarm. Birds arrive from nowhere. Life accelerates wildly, compressing entire lifetimes into days. And then it ends. Heat returns. Moisture vanishes. Flowers wither. Seeds fall. The valley closes the door again, storing potential beneath the surface, waiting for the next interruption. This cycle has repeated for millennia. The valley has been colder than ice ages, wetter than memory, quieter than silence. Heat is just one chapter, though it feels absolute while standing within it. Nothing here is permanent, except change itself. As nights accumulate, familiarity grows. The stars feel closer. The wind's patterns become recognizable. The valley stops feeling hostile and begins to feel honest. It demands respect, not fear. You begin to understand that Death Valley is not empty space. It is full of process. Energy flows, matter shifts, life adapts. The absence of excess reveals clarity. The land does not care how it is named. Death, heat, record, extreme. These are human attempts to translate something far older and simpler. This is a place where the planet expresses itself without decoration. At the end of another long day, as the sun slips low and the valley darkens once more, the air cools gently. The heat releases its grip. Silence settles. And in that stillness, surrounded by stone, salt, and stars, it becomes clear. Death Valley is not where life ends. It is where illusion does. By now, the valley no longer feels loud. Its violence has revealed itself, repeated itself, exhausted itself into familiarity. What remains is something quieter and far more unsettling, a sense of permanence, a realization that the heat, the salt, the silence were never the point. They were the threshold. The land stretches outward, unchanged, but perception narrows. The mind stops asking when it will end. It begins to accept that this is how the world can be. Night deepens again, colder than expected, sharper than memory allows. Stars burn overhead with indifferent clarity. They feel closer here, not because they are nearer, but because nothing competes with them. No moisture softens their light, no haze dulls their edges. The universe exposes itself fully above this basin, as unforgiving and precise as the ground below. The valley lies motionless, yet never still. Heat bleeds upward from stone even hours after sunset. Rocks tick and sigh as they contract. Wind traces old paths through dry washes. Somewhere unseen, life moves cautiously, efficiently, without ceremony. This is not a place of endings. It is a place stripped of narrative. No arrival, no destination, only process. The geology beneath you continues to shift. Plates stretch, faults strain. The valley floor sinks millimeter by millimeter, deepening its wound while surrounding mountains rise in slow response. This tension will not resolve in any human time frame. It does not need to. What once felt hostile now feels inevitable. The desert teaches without instruction. It does not reward curiosity, nor punish ignorance. It simply remains consistent. The rules are visible. Survival depends on listening. In this clarity, something changes. The scale of concern adjusts. Comfort fades in importance. The mind loosens its grip on urgency. There is nothing to rush toward here. Nothing waiting to be conquered. The valley offers no victory, only understanding. At dawn, the sun returns once more, rising without drama. Light spills across salt flats, igniting crystals into blinding white. Mountains cast long shadows that retreat steadily, predictably. The heat follows, not aggressively but faithfully. It will reach its peak again. It always does. But now it feels less like an attack and more like a statement. This is how energy behaves when unchecked. This is what happens when Earth is allowed to express itself fully. Death Valley does not threaten life. It defines its boundaries. Standing here, it becomes impossible to believe this world needs embellishment. The extremes are enough. The silence is enough. The exposure is enough. Eventually, you will leave. All visitors do. The valley does not follow. It does not remember faces or footsteps. Wind smooths the ground. Salt reforms. Heat resets the surface. What lingers is internal, an awareness that the planet is not calibrated for comfort, but for continuity. That life survives not by dominating environments, but by aligning with them. That there are places where control dissolves and honesty remains. As the sun climbs again and the valley settles into its familiar burn, the truth becomes unavoidable. Death Valley is not the hottest place ever recorded because it is cruel. It is the hottest because it is unrestrained. And in that unrestrained stillness, beneath a sky that offers no shelter and a land that offers no illusion, the earth reveals itself exactly as it is, ancient, indifferent, and enduring. And,